Thank you, Dhyana ji, and thank all of you for attending and joining us this morning. The words of Swamiji we need to take to heart. What is the critical element that he's stressing there? It's attunement, learning to put ourselves in that same spiritual wavelength with, as I took it, two elements there. One was the Master's consciousness, and the second one was also the work and the teachings that the Master brought. And for us to be able to, you could say, then take it from there, to also think of ourselves and prepare ourselves, and in the best of we can, to be instruments for that consciousness, instruments for that work. And it does not mean going out and outwardly so much outwardly serving. Some of us have the Dharma for that, but it's living our lives in such a way that we become those channels in just the day-to-day activities of what we do. And we, in a sense, we become like the Master. I was thinking about the Master as we were meditating. I remembered something that was said, that he could remember his life from being in the womb of his mother. He had come into this world as a God-realized soul. He, as he said famously, he says, I killed Yogananda long ago. In other words, that personality or that representation of any particular identity or ego. And he said, you have to come into this world and you have to play your part, like putting on a hot overcoat, a big overcoat on a hot day. It's uncomfortable for a while, but you get used to it. And he came to play his part. And that is what all the great masters, any great master who comes into the world as a liberated soul, comes in for a particular reason. And you could say he knows, and I find this a bit of a mystery, he knows his destiny, he knows his freedom, he's aware of that, but yet he has a part to play, as if, and sometimes as if he puts that knowledge aside so that he can work in this world. He has to play a role, and even though he's free, he has to put on the cloak, you might say, of that heavy coat on a hot day. The great ones come, like he, again and again, and they come to, as it says in the Bhagavad Gita, they come to reestablish Dharma. They give, and as this was particularly Yogananda's role as well. He came, yes, to gather his disciples, to advance the disciples individually, help them to attain self-realization, just that he had attained self-realization. But the really great ones, the Paramuktas, those free souls, those avatar souls, they come to give a new expression to ancient eternal truths in a way that people could understand, because the world changes it changes year to year, but decade to decade, century to century, ages, millennia to millennia. The eternal truths remain the same, you could say, but the clothing changes. The clothing changes as time goes by, and people need the great ones to come again and again and to inspire souls with a new vision, you might say, or a new expression. That he said when he was asked by one of his disciples, is this a new religion? He says, no. It's a new expression, because there cannot be a new religion. Sanatana Dharma is eternal. And even Jesus, like Jesus said, I come to fulfill the law, not to overturn it, and not to overturn or dispute the prophets, but I come to fulfill a new expression. And this has been the message of the great ones, Buddha, Christ, Jesus Christ, Shankara, all the great ones, the great souls. They come not to overturn the law, but to express it in a new way, because the age has changed, and we need to understand. Mankind needs to understand in you might say fresh expressions again and again and again. And such was Master's role. He came to that mission for this particular age that the world is entering into right now. But it's hard to, we know that, I know that intellectually, but it's difficult often to see a great master in that perspective during his lifetime. And I think many who came during his lifetime, they saw him as a very kind, loving, compassionate, powerful, for sure, energetic man they saw the form. And I think sometimes that clouds our ability to see the greatness of what that form of Yogananda was. And perhaps even now in our lifetime, what it is now, it's 130 years since his birth, 70 some years since his passing. Maybe even now we're still a little too close. The tendency is to focus on the personality rather than to see behind that personality to who he really was and what he was doing and why he came, you might say. And I remember when I read the autobiography, I was struck by something when I first read it. And you remember, you read in there that he said that the overall spiritual unfoldment of history is guided, or you could say at least influenced by the great masters. And Babaji, in our case, is guiding that spiritual unfoldment. And I remember when I read that, I thought, does this must mean that if it's guided to what? If there's a guiding hand, what is it guiding us toward? And it implied that there was some destination or some purpose to what was happening in this world. And it wasn't just a matter of random chaos that could go any which way. And it was, to me, that was not a novel thought, but it you might say shattered an old view that I had, that there was no purpose, and it replaced it with something that I found remarkably inspiring. I found that it gave me an entirely different perspective on what was going on in the world, of my own place in that world. And naturally, I couldn't help but want to know, what is the plan? Where is it going? What's the purpose? And it's the awakening of consciousness. And to give those ancient truths, Master came in new expression in this time. And I'd like to just share with you a few of those things that he brought, those expressions that he brought, that he said would ultimately change the world in the centuries to come. And that to me was a very radical thought, change the world. And I know Swami Kriyananda would often say that to us as disciples of this great master, and what we were doing in Ananda Sangha. He says, you don't realize that what we're doing now is perhaps one of the most important things in the world today. And us being disciples of a great master and being willing to take that message out, he says, you don't know the impact that's going to be this will have upon the future. And in the future centuries, people will look upon Paramhansa Yogananda as the avatar of this age. Think, what did he do? What did Master do? He reintroduced, through his books, his writings, through his presence and his lectures, he reintroduced the ancient scriptural, spiritual concepts from ancient times. There's nothing new under the sun, but it does take new forms. He introduced spiritual concepts in a modern world language at this time, using modern terms and concepts. What characterizes, if we ask, what characterizes this modern world? Science, technology. I was thinking about how Master came in the 1920s. He wrote his lessons, his early versions of his lessons, and he began to send them out through mail. And he actually used a very new technology at that time, airmail. Now, we take that for granted. Of course, mail goes in a rapid form. Now, we don't even send physical letters so much anymore. But in those days, that was something very radically new. And he used it. He used the radio, which was in the 1920s, of course, was extremely, like the internet would be 70 years later. He used it. And he was always using something new to spread these teachings. He introduced the concept. It was not a new concept, but he emphasized that element of experience over belief. It was not to be satisfied with dogma, to want techniques to be able to actually experience. He wanted people to experience for themselves. I was going to mention, the United States has 50 states, and each state has a motto. For California's, its motto is the Golden State. Well, there's one state in America. Its motto is the show me state. It's because the tradition of that people of that state, they wouldn't believe anything unless you showed them. And so Paramhansa Yogananda, he said he liked that. It's the state of Missouri. It's in the middle of the country. He said he liked that. Show me. I want to show. I'm not going to take it just on your word. You have to show me. And he even took it so far. He says this path of self-realization is through our own very nervous system. He introduced a universality of approach. It was a world mission that he came to embark upon, not to any one group, not to any one race, any one nation, any one ethnicity. It was a universal, it was a world mission. And Swami Sri Yukteswar said to Yogananda before he got on that boat to go to America, he says, forget that you are Indian in terms of your self-identity, but don't become an American. In other words, become a world citizen. And that's what he was. He was a world citizen. He was everybody's friend. Nobody felt rejected or isolated or excluded from his love because his love radiated and included everybody. He gave tools. He brought the tools, obviously, of Kriya Yoga, deep meditation, but not only that, very specific tools of meditation and of Kriya Yoga, the techniques. And he, and then the Kriya technique has been said to be the greatest tool for self-effort known to mankind in this age today. Self-effort combined with devotion attracts grace. He introduced, which in America, of course, where he went, the concept of grace is very well known. But he said grace is something that is not just manna from heaven. It's something that we can attract to ourselves, and it's available to all, not just a few according to what your religion is or what you believe, but everybody. That cup of grace is there for everybody to drink from. But we must hold up that cup to be able to receive it. And he emphasized that, the receptivity, the attunement to be able to receive grace in our lives. And he would often quote that verse from the Bible, to all those who received him, meaning in that case, Jesus Christ, gave he the power to become the sons of God. And that potential was open to everybody. And it was that universality and accessibility that attracted thousands, hundreds of thousands of people to his lectures when he went to America and embarked upon his world mission. He was a revelation, and he opened the door for people to be able to have a true experience of what their religion was. He didn't try to convert everybody. He just wanted to convert them to their own highest self. He showed it in this way. He showed a universality to all religions, because what he taught applies to everybody. You could say the religion are just the dressing, the surface dressing, the clothing of Sanatana Dharma, which in one culture to the next, it takes on different clothing. But he demonstrated that in his approach to religion, approach to life, and approach to the teachings he brought. And he emphasized the need of how to apply these principles into all walks of life. It was just not just going to satsang on a Sunday or a service on a Sunday morning. He said this, to be true, religion needs to be useful. It needs to apply in every aspect of our life. You can't separate it and make it, our lives become our religion. God is for everyone in all walks of life, not just for a few. There's no necessity. We're not in an age now where you need to leave the world to go to the Himalayas or out in the jungle, and according to the old tradition. It's no longer appropriate, maybe even to do that. Maybe for a few, yes. It's true for a few, there is still that. But for the general society as a whole, you can make, in your little meditation room at home, make that your temple. That's where you'll find God, as Ram Gopal Muzumdar advised the young Mukunda. He didn't need to go to the Himalayas. Rather, bring God into your temple of your heart, and then share that with God. Renunciation, yes, but renunciation of the ego, renunciation of attachment. We can be, and we should be, in the world, at least for the majority of people, be in the world, do your duty, but don't be of the world. And so we ask this question, who was Yogananda? But maybe, I think really, the proper question might be is, what was Yogananda? What was he? And I think we'll come to the understanding of that, and our answer to that question is when we attune ourselves to his consciousness, attune ourselves to that wavelength that he represented. And he gave us the ability to do that. And how do we do that? You could say just in day-to-day layman's terms, is we love. We love God, and we love the instrument of God. And through loving the instrument of God, we end up loving God. Remember, there was not a personality there. He was a pure representation of divine love. And I think if we can, in our hearts, receive him in that way, we'll begin to understand and answer that question. What was he? He was God incarnate, you could say, through that instrumentality of that individual soul. And he came to share that with all of us, just as all the great masters throughout history, that's what they do. They come again and again, as he said, he'll come 1 trillion times as long as there's one stray brother weeping on the wayside. So he came with this great mission, but on the micro day-to-day level, I felt that, yes, he came especially for me. And haven't you ever felt that, looking back, that your life's been guided? I think, look back, see how things have fallen into places, if there was a guiding hand. And I think for all of us who have a relationship, have built up a relationship with Master, there is that, it's that his guiding hand has been behind the scenes, guiding us. Maybe sometimes it's been rocky, sometimes it's been smooth, but somehow I look back and I see my life was guided. And I know intellectually that Master came into the world for a great world mission, but I know in my heart that Yogananda came especially for me. And I think each one of you could perhaps say the same thing, because both are true. He had a world mission, but he had a specific mission for each one of his disciples. God bless all of you.
Thank you, Jaya. That was just wonderful. I'd like to start with a brief reading from what Swamiji wrote, Why I Love My Guru. When I met him, Master, he said to me, I give you my unconditional love. No treasure surely could be greater than that sacred promise. He has fulfilled it in countless ways, more and more through the years. I have found him mentally guiding me, leading me toward inner freedom, filling me with inner bliss. In all my dealings with Master, when he was in the body, I always knew he was on my side, not against anyone or anything else, but supportive of me in my struggles toward perfection. He responded supportively to my least thought. If I was wrong, he said so in such a way that only if we were in a group, I could know he was talking to me. He never blurted out anything. All his words were carefully measured so as to be as understandable and acceptable as possible. There was, as I said, a dignity about him that was completely innate and natural. He was indeed a king among men. And I think most people felt it instinctively. And everything I ever saw him do or heard him say was completely appropriate to the occasion. Happy Master's birthday to all of you. It's such a blessed day when we feel Master's vibrations, his love, his joy, his guidance. And I think that we all know, as Jayaji said, that he came for us. I surely felt that. I was just roaming around, not knowing what was going on with life. And then suddenly I prayed for help. And the very next day, I met someone who could teach me how to meditate. And that person gave me Autobiography of a Yogi. He guided me to Swamiji. Someone told me about Swami Kriyananda, and I went up there and Swamiji said, "This is your home." So it is so, Master's guiding us. And particularly, he's guided us in this lifetime through Swami Kriyananda. When Swami met Master, he said, "I want to be your disciple." And I remember one time when we were speaking about Swamiji, this was in Italy, and we were saying that Swamiji, he wrote so many books and he did this and he started many things in communities and music and all. And when Swamiji spoke, he said, he didn't hear that lecture, but he had heard about it. There were a panel of us speaking. And when he gave his talk, he said, "None of that matters to me. I just want to be known as a good disciple." And I thought about that over the years. And what does that really mean, a good disciple? That over the time that I knew Swamiji in his body, he more and more and more became Master. The Master came into his being. It wasn't just that he had a connection with Master. Master became one, or Swamiji became one with Master. Now that's what it means to really be a disciple, is to become one with the Guru's vibrations, with this consciousness. And that's what happened with Swamiji. And he would always point us to, Master's the Guru, I'm not the Guru, Master is the Guru. And surely that was true, but Master became the Guru through the instrument of Swamiji. And of course, he guided us in various ways, but it took me a long time to realize that that's what was happening with Swamiji, was Master more and more became him, came into him, and he helped us, and he blessed us, and he uplifted us, and he changed our consciousness, and he changed our lives completely. But that was Master. And Master, he could work through Swamiji because Swamiji gave his whole life. He said, "I don't want to have one thought that's not Master." And so Master could write through him. He wrote books. Swamiji would say, "This Master's writing through me." And I always thought, yeah, that's nice to say, but it was really trying to get us to understand that. I remember when he was working on the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, and I was here in India, in Gurgaon, that one day Swamiji said, "Well, I'm not able to write what I want to write because I don't have the materials that I need." The very next day, he said, "It's coming to me. Master is writing this through me now." And you could see he was invigorated. He was just a beam of light. And he was writing, he wrote 600 pages in 2 months. And he finished the whole project because Master wrote it through him. And during that time, you could feel Master in the house where he was writing. You could feel Master and Swamiji. And I remember once we were all there reading for hours, up to midnight or whatever he would give you, read this chapter and I'll read this chapter. And I remember once I was leaving there, it was like around midnight, and I walked down the stairs. Some of you have been in that house, Guru Kripa had been there. And I was just going past the kitchen and getting ready to go out the door. And I just felt this energy in the house. It was so powerful. And the next day I asked Swamiji, I said, Master, is he here in this house with you? And he said, yes. And he didn't say, I don't know, maybe. So he said, yes, he is. He kept trying to get us to understand that it was Master who could write through him. The reason he was able to write music is Master could work through him as a channel. Well, how could he start the communities? That was Master's idea. And he worked it out through Swamiji. How could he have his education principles and education for life? How could they take birth? It was master through Swamiji again. And how could he lecture? I saw Swamiji, many of you did, but he could barely walk. At the end of his lifetime, just before his passing, he couldn't hardly sing anymore. He loved singing. And I was remembering particularly the talk in Chennai. He had to be helped out, had to sit down and all of that. But as soon as he started talking about Master and the path, boom, Master was speaking through him. It was very clear. But, there were always doubts, well, who is Swami and where's Master? But he kept trying to point, Master is doing all of it. The masters, and Master particularly. So what does that mean for us? As Swamiji said on that talk, it's like a relay race. Swamiji is passing the baton. Not everybody can do everything, but one talk I heard of Swamiji recently said, what I have done, I hope you can do. Now, we can't do all that, but we can do something. And what Master is giving us now, his work to do. Swamiji, of course, but Master through him. And so what is he's saying? Master's giving us his power. He's giving us his Shakti. He's giving us his consciousness. He's giving us his upliftment. He's giving us ideas, inspiration, what to do. He's giving us guidance. What are the next steps? How to teach yoga or teach a meditation class, or how to pray for people, or how to go around teaching. He's giving this to us. It's not over. It's just getting started. And I think we have to realize that he's passing the baton now. And of course, what is our relationship to him? Where, as Swamiji so beautifully said, we're his children. We're his spiritual heirs. He's giving us his spiritual consciousness, his awareness, his experience of God is what the Guru's giving. And he's also giving us his work. Will you continue it? Will you share my vibrations? And I remember one time that Swamiji, near the end of his life, he was talking to some of us, and he was in a very high state of consciousness. I'd never seen him like that before, but he's one of the things that he said to us, particularly he was looking at Jayaji and me. He said, it's not enough to give the teachings. You have to give bliss. Bliss avatar is what Master was. He said, you have to give bliss. You have to give vibration, Master's bliss and Master's vibrations. And I thought, well, that's a lot to have to do. But if he said it, we had to do it. But just recently it came to me that he wasn't just talking about when you're in a class. And I think he wasn't just talking to us, for sure. He was talking about no matter where you are, what you're doing, the teaching is you. The vibration of Master can come through you to anybody. His blessings, his grace, his vibrations, his bliss. And I would say, to close, try to make every day contact with Master, deep contact in your meditation, not the mind wandering around and thinking about the day, but every day I'm trying to make a contact deeply. And at the spiritual life, you can. Master, I want to feel you now. And secondly, to give that contact that you have felt to people that you come in touch with, meaning as bliss, as his vibration, as his love. Give a gift to Master today on his birthday, the gift of yourself as his channel, as his child, as one who will continue his work, even in a quiet way, that I am giving his blessings, his bliss, his vibrations to all. God bless you. Happy Master's birthday.